And none of their arguments hold up to any sort of scrutiny. None. And you said this the other day on Twitter, where it was like, so the pro-abortion argument is essentially, if you want to keep the baby, it's a baby. If you don't want to keep the baby, it's not. I'm sorry, this coming from science, okay.
This is science.
Yeah, this is absurdity. It's because they know it's not just a clump of cells. They know it's not just tissue. This is the lawful destruction of innocent human life, and you're doing it for whatever arbitrary reason you've decided you want to.
Nick Freitas, thanks so much for sitting down for exclusives.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
So you're already super popular with a lot of people on YouTube, and you were on my podcast a few months ago, and people loved what you had to say about relationships, marriage, all the things.
That's probably why I'm popular, is because I'm now associated with you.
No, you were definitely very popular before. So thanks for your witness, because I love how you share the love you have with your wife, your family. You have an incredible story, so I want to hear about that. But also, you're very passionately pro-life, and we need more men who are willing to speak up and do that pro-life advocacy. So thank you.
Oh, no, that is absolutely my pleasure, and I think it's a responsibility.
All right, so for those that don't know much about Nick Freitas, tell me a little bit about your background. Well, starting with who you are today, I know you're also a delegate for Virginia.
Yeah.
So you've got a big political position. So give us some background on Nick.
So yeah, I currently serve in the Virginia House of Delegates and kind of in concert with the work that we do on social media and other places. Started off, my wife and I, we've been married almost 25 years now. We met in high school. I can take you back to the place I was sitting when she walked into the classroom freshman year. And well, because I remember looking at her and going, wow, that's never going to happen. And then our senior year, we started dating. I left for the military.
Wait, how did you make that happen?
I don't know. It wasn't my charm. I don't know. I think it was because we had a graduating class of 27. So she didn't have a lot of options. And then I married her so quickly after high school that she didn't have a chance to realize that there's a much bigger world out there. So I'm very proud of myself for that. And it's a strategy I recommend of all mediocre guys wanting to marry way above their league. But we got married about less than a year out of high school. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division at the time. We got stationed over in Hawaii. 9/11 happened. I volunteered for Army Special Forces. We had our first daughter when I was stationed over in Hawaii. Did a couple tours in Iraq with 1st Special Forces Group. We had our son while I was there, had my youngest daughter as well. And then got out of the service in, gosh, it was June of 2009. Still did some work in the counterinsurgency, counterterrorism areas, and started to get more involved in politics, largely because of how frustrated I was on a number of issues. And got elected to the House of Delegates in 2015. And I've been serving there ever since. And we kind of realized somewhere along the way that while politics was an important part of this battle for everything that we care about, you have to win the culture as well. If you're just trying to win everything through the legislature, it's an uphill battle that you will eventually lose. You have to be competing for the culture as well. And so that's what got us more involved in our show called Making the Argument, as well as some other things that it's been great to be able to do that alongside with Tina. And so that kind of brings us up to where we are right now.
So you were in the military for how many years?
11 years active duty and a couple of years guard.
Okay, so you're retired now.
Yeah, well, I didn't fully retire because I got out, it was 12 years. I think it was.
You got out at 12,
total.
Yeah. But you were doing special forces work. So what was that like?
I loved special forces. So I first went in infantry and I was a paratrooper. Had an opportunity to go to ranger school, sniper school, some other things like that. The reason why I went over to Special Forces is because when I got stationed in Hawaii at the 25th Infantry Division, 9/11 took place, and I started watching as friends of mine that were deployed with Ranger Regiment lost their lives over in Afghanistan, and I kind of felt like I was sitting on the sidelines. I was also very impressed with the way that Army Special Forces, better known as Green Berets, conduct operations. It's a lot of by, through, and with the local population. A lot of focus on unconventional warfare, counterinsurgency, which I found to be fascinating work. And so volunteered for that. And then the thing I love the most about it, I had somebody ask me to describe Special Forces. I said, Special Forces is where you go if you like the military, but you got a problem with authority. Because you operate in very small teams, 12-person teams. You work by, through, and with the local population. So there was a lot of operations we went on where it may be 6 Green Berets and 50 Iraqis, maybe 20 of them are militia, 20 are active duty, another 10 maybe police or whatnot. So you really got to work in some interesting environments. We went all over the world training other militaries. So I've trained Korean Special Operations, Bangladeshi border guards, along with the combat operations we did in the Middle East.
What made you go from I'm leaving the military to I'm going to run for office in Virginia and I'm going to start, I mean, you do these super viral videos. I mean, you're a state delegate, but then you're also doing super viral content online about marriage and relationships and life and family and basically values, the values that we care about so much about at Live Action. So what was that transition point like to go from I'm leaving the military and now I'm going to go run for office and be a YouTuber?
I know. It's fun. I'm actually thrilled that I would bet you right now that half of my social media audience has no idea I'm an elected official, and I take great pride in that. I remember having a conversation with a sergeant major that I really respected. And in SF, it was a lot more common to just use first names when we were talking to one another and whatnot. But great guy. And he said, Nick, why are you getting out? You've been in 11 years active duty. I had a really great opportunity for my next duty assignment within SF, something I was excited about. But I remember looking at him and said, Jerry, we actually had a really successful combat tour. We got a lot of high value targets. We did what we were supposed to do. And it is becoming harder and harder to navigate the bureaucracy to actually be able to get out there and do our jobs. I said, it is one thing to ask us to go overseas and to fight. It is another thing, and to be away from our family. I missed my youngest daughters. I missed her first everything other than her birth. So it's one thing to ask us to do that year after year. It's another thing to have us do it and then tie our hands the entire time we're trying to do it. And he looked at me and he goes, well, that's a crap answer, Nick. If you got a problem with something, you stay in, you gain the rank, and then you fix the problem. And I remember looking back and saying, Sergeant Major, you're a Sergeant Major. How many problems have you been able to fix? And he had some choice words for me at that moment, but he admitted that that was a good point. And I said, well, that's the reason for that. Is because we're not the problem. The guys putting on the uniforms going overseas to fight, we're not the problem. It's the guys putting on suits and going and walking into political buildings. They're the ones making these policies, and they're the ones that are creating this sort of conditions. And so I always thought maybe I'd work somewhere on the policy side, not elected office, but I had a good friend of mine who's actually my co-host on Making the Argument, Christian Hines. He kind of talked me into running for the state legislature. I was challenging a 14-year incumbent at the time, and he just up and decided to retire. And so we walked into our first election cycle unopposed. But part of it too, because Tina, originally my wife, was not sure about all that and being in the public light like that. And she became convinced that if we were going to continue to essentially complain about what was going on when we had an opportunity to do something very relevant to fix it, then we had a responsibility to do that. And if that meant some sacrifice for the family, well, that was not something we were unfamiliar with. And then the social media stuff happened really by accident initially. It was more, there was some viral floor speeches that took place on a variety of issues, Second Amendment, family, the life issue. And we started just engaging more on those mediums. And we realized that there was a lot of messaging that could take place when you would establish trust with your audience. And that was a big part of it. Was we didn't want to go on as a politician asking people for votes or necessarily advocating. We just wanted to talk about things that we had learned, getting married young, having kids, things that we valued, why we valued them. And it resonated with people. And what we found is that if you could establish trust with people talking about issues that they cared about, then when it moved on to some of these more controversial issues, they were far more willing to give you an audience. So true.
So what made you so pro-life in the first place?
I think for me, on some level, it was always a fairly simple issue for me because it was always ingrained to me very early on that innocent human life deserves to be protected. And kind of in addition to that, I wasn't planned. So my mom was actually attending Biola University. So she was attending Bible College of Los Angeles and ended up pregnant with me. And that kind of threw off everything that she had originally planned. She was supposed to go on a scholarship to Columbia to learn Spanish. She was going through the nursing program. And then all of a sudden she had to leave all that. And she remained a nurse, became an RN, and she's been working as a nurse ever since. In fact, she works in the OB now and has for about 30 years. But it was a combination of, on a basic philosophical side, this is innocent human life. You protect innocent human life. You sure as hell don't kill it. That just, there is something, there is something inside me that is just gets infuriated by this entire concept, and infuriated by the idea that I, as a man, am not allowed to talk about it. And it's like, oh, really? Okay, well, I've never been a woman, but I do know what it is to be a fetus. I do know what it is to be an unplanned one. And this idea that we're going to foster the kind of society where not only do we make light of this fact, but we actually celebrate that what is effectively the destruction of innocent human life. But then we're also going to essentially train an entire generation of women to believe that this isn't something that you do even under distress or extreme circumstances, but know that this is a manifestation of female empowerment. The idea that you would take this capability that women have that is so unique and so special and so critical to everything else around us and turn it on them as if it's something to be discarded. On so many levels, I think it is fascinating to me when I have people tell me, just leave this issue alone, it's toxic, focus on the other stuff.
Like consultants, political consultants?
Political consultants, colleagues. You don't get to sit there and tell me how concerned you are about property rights or taxes or gun rights if you're willing to completely surrender on the most fundamental right of all, which is necessary for all the other rights to even be enjoyed or considered. And so that's why this is an issue I'm very passionate about it. Tina's very passionate about it. I always say, if you think I'm passionate about this issue, talk to my wife for about 5 minutes. I look docile next to her. So, but yeah, that's why.
So growing up for your mom, so she chose to keep you, obviously. She raised you. Did you have brothers and sisters growing up? Like, what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, my dad and mom did get married.
Oh, wow.
When they found out. Yeah, it was I didn't know initially. In fact, I was probably 16 and I was at my grandfather's den and I was looking at an old wedding invitation and I saw the date for the wedding and I was like, Grandpa, was I premature? I'm like, this math don't math, right? And so that's when I was a little bit older when I found out. So yeah, my mom and dad got married, they had my brother, and then they got divorced. And I'd spend the school years with my mom, and then I'd actually come down here to Southern California with my dad. He was LAPD. And then my dad got remarried, and I have 7 other brothers and sisters.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm the oldest of 9. And we tease a little bit that I'm 44. My oldest daughter is 21 and my youngest brother is 21. So yeah, so we got a lot of kids in the space. But
nice. So Virginia has become increasingly purple over the last decade plus. Yeah. And it used to not be that way. But there's different trends like that across the country where more and more people are becoming left on certain issues, certain groups anyways, like LGBT, sexual morality, and then life. What's that been like for you being in a purple state? And how do we communicate? What's your strategy to communicate with people that just don't get it on life and sex?
I take a very libertarian position on a lot of issues. And people have asked me before, they're like, well, Nick, you seem so libertarian on this other stuff. Why are you not on this? I said, I am. Because if you look at what the government's role is in the first place, why does it exist if not to essentially protect your God-given rights? And the initial God-given right is your right to life. So part of it, I think, is we all understand that there's political considerations and not every bill we would like to see signed is going to get signed in every state that we would like it accomplished. So the question is how do you get around that? And this is a question I've had with colleagues before that will look at me and be like, Nick, we get it. We're all pro-life, right? They're not, but they all like to say, we're all pro-life.
All of them?
Everyone likes to say that, yeah. Okay. We're all pro-life. So how do we, I'm like,
because right now with the composition of the state politics in Virginia, right, what's the current composition, just for people's knowledge, because it is a purple state.
It's 49-51 in the Virginia House of Delegates, 49 Republican, okay. 51, and it's 19-21 in the Senate. So it's one vote in both chambers. But the
51% on the left side is not pro-life. You're talking about your Republican colleagues.
Yes, okay. the Republican colleagues.
There are pro-life Democrats, but not so much.
Not in Virginia. Not in Virginia.
Okay.
And you know this because I carried the Born Alive Act, which doesn't even affect abortion. It just says if the baby is born despite the abortion, you have to provide basic medical care. I can't get one vote for that.
It's insane.
Not one.
So not one Democrat vote
no.
for a bill that would basically ensure that if the baby survives the abortion, they get basic medical care.
Yeah, and if the doctor fails to do so, there's penalties associated with that. They will not agree to that. In fact, another one of those moments where I have to sit there, gain my composure. I had a witness who had survived 3 saline abortions. So she, as the infant, 3 saline abortions, and she
meaning they failed the first time, tried to kill her again. Mm-hmm. How old was she?
The witness,
when they were trying to abort her.
Oh, well, I mean, I think she was
7 or 8 months.
I don't think she was 7 or 8, but she was definitely past the first trimester. She shared her testimony, and I watched as 3 pro-abortion lobby groups got up there and basically said she was lying. What do you mean she's lying? I understand it's embarrassing for abortion doctors to fail at what should be a fairly simple task, since it's not like the baby can fight back. But you don't get to deny it that it's happened when you're talking to someone that has all the medical records to demonstrate that it did. And again, that doesn't move anybody. Our side was already going to vote the way they wanted. The other side was not going to vote, and nobody was moved by it. And you sit there, this is my 9th year in the General Assembly, and you sit there and you watch this year over year over year, and you start to come to the conclusion that, again, the reason I've been asked before, why do you get up on the floor and speak if it's not going to change any of their minds? I'm like, I'm not trying to change their minds. I'm trying to change their constituents' minds. I'm trying to change the minds of people that are actually willing to listen and give me a fair hearing. And so that's what this has become about, is that, okay, I recognize in Virginia, I'm not going to get the bill I want. I can't even get the Born Alive Act through with them in charge.
How insane, by the way. You can't even get a Born Alive. I mean, that's the federal issue too, yeah. Right? I mean, Barack Obama voted 4 times as a state senator against the Born Alive Act before he became president. I mean, this is like a Democrat thing to not want to provide basic medical care to preborn children. This has been, I mean, again, some Democrats are pro-life, but at large, the Democratic Party is against this kind of a law.
They can't surrender on a single issue. They can't give any ground on this whatsoever. Safe, legal, and rare was never going to exist forever, because the moment you say safe, legal, and rare, here's the question. If it's not a problem, if it's just a clump of cells, why should it be rare? What's the issue? The moment you say rare, you're acknowledging that something is going on here that shouldn't be. And then you're trying to make an excuse for, well, it's justified under these conditions. Well, they're not saying that anymore. Now they're just saying it's a right. It's something that should not only be exercised, but in certain cases celebrated.
I mean, that was Hillary Clinton's line, right? Abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. But now it's all about abortion access and unlimited.
Yes.
Taxpayer-funded access to abortion with 0 restrictions. The
biggest thing that the biggest battle that we have in Virginia over the next couple of years is not going to get pro-life legislation passed because we don't have the votes to do it. It's going to be to stop them enshrining into the Virginia Constitution an amendment which says that you can have abortion all the way up to the point of birth with no exceptions. That's what they're doing. And what's amazing is I'll go on social media and I'll say, this is what they want. That's ridiculous. Nobody wants that. That doesn't happen. Okay, great. Well, then you'll accept just the first 2 trimesters. No. How about heartbeat? Heartbeat, right? Nobody's saying it's a clump of cells when it's heartbeat. No heartbeat? How about brain activity? Brain activity. Can we do brain activity? That's fine. No, not there. How about the baby can feel pain? No, let me put it differently. The baby can feel itself being aborted.
Being dismembered, which is typically the age. Yes. Live dismemberment.
So at that point, any restrictions whatsoever? No? Okay. Then that's what you want. And you need to go out there and be honest with your own constituents, but they're not. They don't go out there and campaign on all the way up to the point of birth with no exceptions whatsoever. Healthy mom, healthy baby, month 9, whatever. They don't tell people that because they know the vast majority of the country is not with them on that. But they know that if they surrender on anything, it begs the question. Well, if it's problematic here, why isn't it problematic here? Why? It's because they know it's not just a clump of cells. They know it's not just tissue. This is the lawful destruction of innocent human life, and you're doing it for whatever arbitrary reason you've decided you want to. And none of their arguments hold up to any sort of scrutiny. None. And you said this the other day on Twitter, where it was like, so the pro-abortion argument is essentially, if you want to keep the baby, it's a baby. If you don't want to keep the baby, it's not. I'm sorry, this coming from science, okay.
This is science.
Yeah, this is absurdity. So my objective in a place like Virginia is, 1, I want to stop doing something like that in the Virginia Constitution. And 2, the other thing I've recognized is that we have to do a better job of winning the culture in Virginia. If we want the legislation, And by the way, let's be honest about, I think, what the pro-life movement really wants long term. We don't want to just pass a law. We want to make the concept of it so absurd, so ridiculous, the brutality of it so recognizable to everybody that people wouldn't even consider it. That's victory. Now, do I believe that there should be laws protecting the unborn? Absolutely, because it's innocent human life. But genuine victory is not just when we have a law. Genuine victory is when you have a culture that actually upholds, defends, protects, and welcomes life. Doesn't look for excuses to destroy it.
We need both.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when Roe v. Wade was ruled, and we had this whole transformation in American politics where now abortion was the law of the land, decided by these 7 male Supreme Court justices at the time, right? This wasn't some like Democratic vote. Not that there should be Democratic votes on whether or not you kill babies. Like, that's not up for democracies to decide. But aside from that, at the time, a lot of people were pro-life. Many states had abortion bans, and now federally it's like law passed down from on high. So the law being what it was in 1973, because of Roe v. Wade and everything changing, I think did impact the culture negatively. And there's that powerful interplay between law and culture where, you know, like you wear your seatbelt because most people do. There's a law. Mm-hmm. 3 decades ago, I guess, or I don't know, I wasn't around in like the 70s or 80s, but there was people didn't typically wear seatbelts. Mm-hmm. So these things do matter, but to your point, we need to change the culture. How do we change the culture? Oh. What do we do to change the culture to get people, especially those that are not already with us? We got to activate some of people in the middle, but those that are not already with us, how do we change them?
Well, I think part of it is you need to look really hard at what your kids are being taught in the public school system. Mm-hmm. When 80% of the sex education has been approved by Planned Parenthood, keep in mind, Planned Parenthood doesn't benefit from your kids making wise decisions about sex. Planned Parenthood benefits, the abortion industry benefits by your kids getting exposed to the idea of having sex as early as possible. That's how they get into their clinics, right? So they have a profit incentive for that. So be very, very aware of what your kids are being taught through social emotional learning and through sex education in a public school system. The other thing I would say is that all of this, I don't know if I will ever be able to look back and say that I got something substantive done on this in the legislature. I'm going to try for as long as I'm there, but I'll tell you this, my wife and I created 3 very pro-life children. So it starts with, first of all, speaking to men, the moment you buy into this idea that this is not your issue, you're not doing that because you're giving way and understanding that you can't respect it in the same way or understand it in the same way a woman is. You're being a coward. So don't be a coward. Right? We don't accept cowardice. Real men don't accept cowardice in any other area of our life. Don't accept it in this. Right? As a husband, as a father, one of the things I signed up for the moment I married my wife was to protect her and to protect and provide for all of our children. Right? That became a part of my entire life's mission at that point. And it is an incredible privilege, along with being an incredible responsibility. And the stats are in. If you talk to a woman who's in a situation where she doesn't know if she wants to have an abortion now, the most influential person in her life, right, it is not Taylor Swift, right? It's not even her parents. It's the father. It's the father of the child. If the father of the child comes up and says, look, no matter what happens here, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to provide for you financially, and I'm going to be there for our child. The chance of that woman having an abortion drops exponentially. Right? A lot of women find themselves in a situation where they don't want to make this decision. They feel pressured into it. And unfortunately, they feel pressured into it by a lot of licentious men that are all about fourth wave feminism, when it means they can sleep with as many women as they want and not have to bear any of the responsibilities for what happens afterwards. Right? But it's cowardly. So if you're not ready to be a daddy, don't do daddy things, right? That's number 1 as a man. And 2, if you do, step up and do your job. Because this is one of the most important things that we do within our lives. I could die tomorrow, and I am proud to have served as a Green Beret. I am proud to have served in the Virginia legislature. But the thing I'm most proud about on the headstone, no, that's being a husband and a father. That will be the most lasting impact I can ever have. And that impact, by the way, takes place whether you show up or whether you don't. And so that's a big part of men assuming their proper role with this entire debate. And it doesn't mean that you don't respect the fact that it doesn't impact you the exact same way it impacts women. But you're still a part of that argument, and you better stand up and you better be willing to make it.
How do we get more men to see it the way you do? Because there's so much confusion today. And, I think a lot of people, young men and women, are being raised in homes where maybe they don't have the best role models. There's issues, traumas. Like you said, the school, the educational system is screwed up in many ways. Why do we take that conviction and moral clarity that you have, and how do we help as many people as possible have it too?
One of the things I noticed, Special Forces has a bit of a culture, right? And the culture in general has a very, very, and not just in SF, but in the country in general has a very, I think, trivial view of sex. And that's problematic. One of the things that I was adamant about with both my daughters and my son was that this is something that you save for that person that is worthy of it. And the person that's worthy of it is the one you marry. So it wasn't this idea of I'm withholding something from you, or I'm telling you can't have something. It's one day you're going to meet that person that is worthy of it, and this is going to be just an incredible thing between the two of you. So here's the question you have to ask yourself: how much do you want to have to explain to that person before that day comes? Right? Do you want to be able to go into that where this is something that is special and unique between the two of you? Because if it is, I promise you, it's going to be something incredible for you in that. And that's the way we talked about it with our kids, but it was also this idea that this is a responsibility. This is a responsibility that you have for somebody in the future. And I see some dads that will look at this from the standpoint of when it's their daughters, it's, oh yeah, anybody touches my daughter, I'm gonna beat him to a pulp. But my boy, hey, you got to go out there. It's like, no. Don't raise your son to be the sort of man that you would tell your own daughters to avoid. Don't do that, right? Make sure that your son is a man of honor. And they look at their responsibilities as preceding even marriage. And so, again, how do you convince other men? Well, the first man I was responsible for convincing of this is my son. But he has to see it not just in the arguments that I make, he has to see it in the way that I treat his mother, the way that I treat his sisters, my expectations of him. What am I rewarding in his own conduct and behavior? And what am I punishing in his own conduct and behavior? That's a critical role. If we can win this entire argument in one generation, if we make the first argument the one that we make in our household, not in the halls of Congress or in your state legislature. I'm not saying ignore those. You have to. And I'm not saying ignore the arguments that you have to make to the broader culture. Of course you have to do that. I've dedicated a significant portion of my life to doing that, but not at the expense of the argument I make within the home. So I really think sometimes people get so caught up in areas of the culture that they have very little control over, in some cases zero control over, while ignoring the thing that they have the most control over. And that is, have you done a good job representing your beliefs to your own children? Because if the answer is yes, you're going to be not only shocked, but incredibly proud when they're able to go into environments that are difficult and articulate what they believe, because it's no longer them regurgitating what mom and dad told them. It's their belief, because now they believe it's true and they're willing to fight for it.
What are your top 3 pieces of advice for parents then, especially dads, to do that modeling you're describing, to raise that son that they can be proud of?
Your kids are watching, they're not just listening to what you say, they're watching what you do. And so as a father raising a son specifically, how you treat their mother matters. Because what they're learning at that is they want to emulate dad. And if dad is the sort of person that they see as doing a good job as protecting and providing for the mom and treating their mother with respect and love and dignity, if they see that relationship as being the closest confidant, then that's what they're going to try to emulate. That's their expectation that has been created for them. So that's number one. That relationship that you have with your wife is demonstrating to your son. The thing I should have said first is your relationship with God matters. There are so many people that we talk to. We just did an episode on, is Christianity reasonable? Because of the number of people that have commented on our podcast and everything else, where they will say things like, okay, well, Nick, I like what you have to say about this, but can you just leave out the God stuff? No, I can't. I'm sorry. It's critical to what I believe. It's critical to my worldview. That's what gives me the strength to believe in the truth of objective morality. And so your relationship with God, your relationship with your wife is critical. And then your relationship specifically with them. Are you actually not just modeling what they should do, but are you instructing them? And then I think this is not that I don't think it's also important with my daughters, but the way I am with my daughters is different than the way I am with my son. It has to be. The world expects different things from them. My son, I'm tougher on. My son, I give certain challenges to. I set him up in situations where it's going to be tough.
Like what? What's an example?
Jobs that I give him to do where I will say, I want this done and I want it done by this time. How do you want me to do it? That's not my problem. You just need to get it done. So I look forward to rewarding your ingenuity or punishing your incompetence. Up to you. Now, if he wants to come and ask me for help, and again, this is age appropriate. I don't do this for my 4-year-old. I remember when my son, the rough and tumble stuff, wrestling with your son, and because the bottom line is that a young man does need to learn that he has to have a capability and capacity for violence. And then he has to train it and hone it and use it to the service of something noble, because you don't want to have to use it. I don't want to have to engage in violence. But if my wife is depending on me, if my children are depending on me, right, I don't get to farm that out to the police or to somebody else. The moment when my kids or my wife is in danger and I'm not the one that can actually stand up and defend them or protect them, I'm going to carry that with me for the rest of my life. And so making sure that your son understands that, no, you do have an obligation to provide and protect. And so when they're little, it's just rough and tumble. It's going back and forth. It's when they get hurt doing something, looking at them being like, hey, buddy, man up, right? And then as they get a little bit older, it's giving them different responsibilities. It's giving them heavy stuff to carry. This is another critical role that I think moms play in their own son's development that sometimes I don't even know if they realize how important it is to tell your little boy, hey, get the groceries, open this for mommy, hey, check the door. When you're walking down the sidewalk with him, make him walk on the street side, right? When he's 12, 13, 14, that's appropriate age. He walks on that street side, because at that point, what he's starting to see is that you are welcoming him from being a boy that you took care of to being a young man where things are going to be expected of him. And you will be shocked at how much he loves to fill that role, how much he loves to have that responsibility and take it on. And man, when he is rewarded for it, they embrace it. All of us want love, right? And all of us want respect. But there's a certain point in a boy's life where they start to become a young man where they need the respect. But you have to earn it. I can't give you that. I can give you love. I can't give you respect. That has to be earned. And so you have to create conditions where they have an opportunity to go out and earn it. So as a father, you have that relationship with God. You demonstrate for your son what that relationship looks like. You demonstrate for your son what that relationship looks like with your wife and with his siblings and with him. And then you demonstrate that you are there to help guide him, because one day he's taking your place in this world as a man that is going to be expected to provide and to protect for his family, for his community, all of those things. Growing up, sitting in the den, listening to my grandfather talk about World War II, my dad talk about LAPD, and I was a kid, and then coming home from war, and now I was sitting with them, all right? And so making sure that your sons have those opportunities, that one day they grow into the sort of man that embrace those masculine roles of protecting, of providing. And that's the sort of man that when he finds out he's going to be a father, he might be a little scared because he understands what that responsibility is, but he instantly goes into, it's time to protect, it's time to provide. And they'll not only conduct themselves that way, they'll vote that way.
For the men that don't have this modeled for them growing up, because it sounds like your dad and your grandpa, even what you were just saying about, their experience in public service or in military service, doing, LAPD or military, and you probably grew up looking up to that and seeing that these are men that are protectors and pillars in their community. But if you're a man and maybe you didn't have that growing up, but you now have to model it for others, what's your advice to that man who himself is looking for how to do this?
It's easy to build upon a legacy that you were handed, and it's very, very difficult when you have no concept of it because it was never provided for you. I've had young men message me and say, "This is great, Nick. I'm glad you had that. I don't. Where am I supposed to get that?" And the thing I usually tell them is twofold. One is look for the sort of men that you respect and admire, and foster those sorts of relationships. The other thing that I will say is yeah, it is nice to be able to build upon a legacy that you were handed, but man, how incredible is it to be able to build one from scratch? Like how amazing is it that those men that I talk about in my life, the ones that provided a standard or something to follow or something to admire and build upon, you're that guy for your family. You didn't get it. You were owed it. You were owed it and you didn't get it. And that sucks. And I'm not going to tell you it doesn't. But you now have the opportunity to be the one that changes the entire trajectory of your family from here on out, to where one day when your great-grandchildren are looking back and they're wondering why it was one way and now it's this way, it's because of you. It's because you made that decision. The conditions were not ideal. And this is something I have to tell young men a lot right now, because there's so many young men that are frustrated about the world that they're growing up in that seems completely hostile to them as men, hostile to masculinity in general. It's important to recognize when that's actually taking place, but the only way to beat it is to go through it. They have to be the men that, despite the fact that they were not given what they should have been, they're going to be the ones that step up to change that and make the difference for their own son's life, for their own daughter's life. They'll be the sort of man that their father should have been. And one day their grandchildren will be eternally grateful for that. And so it's tough, but you can either look at it as something that's unjust, because it is, or you can look at it as an opportunity to do something extraordinary in your own family's history.
And it's world changing when it happens. And I think when I see those stories happen, and like those kind of, this self-made man is some term that's used, but that man who's really building from scratch because he wasn't given the template, he wasn't given the leadership as a kid. And there's something so especially admirable about that. And it's something that's so inspiring about that, I think, for other people, because it is possible. Yeah. It takes work, but it's possible.
Oh, absolutely. You can take someone with a mentality that just insists on overcoming regardless of their conditions, and you can put them in the worst conditions possible, and they will make it better. They will improve it. They will change the conditions for everyone that comes after them. You can take someone with a victim mentality, and you can give them the most ideal conditions possible, and they will make it worse. They will make it worse for the people that come after them. So when you recognize that you do have agency over your own actions, you might not be able to always control your circumstances, but you always have agency over your own actions. And when you assume that, and when you assume the responsibility for that, again, it's not only changing things for your life, it'll change things for your family. And by extension, that's what changes things for your community and your country. We will save the United States, and we will save the unborn ultimately by men and women first recognizing their responsibilities for their own families. And I honestly believe that we're on the cusp of an entire generation that was horribly lied to about reality, about their place in it, about their agency over their own life, horribly lied to for a variety of reasons, which it would take an entire episode to go into. But the bottom line is that more and more of them are waking up to it, and more of them are waking up to it at younger ages. And now they're looking around for, okay, what works? I know what doesn't work. I know what I was told. I know what the experts told me, but I want to see something that works. And if you're the sort of person that can actually work to model that for them, you're going to be shocked at how many people come up and ask, what is different? What is different? And that's going to be your opportunity, because now you're going to have authority to talk on the subject. It's not simply because your argument was good, but because the way you lived your life bore fruit.
A lot of men and women, young men and women today, I think, feel adrift too when it comes to wanting to live that good life and like be that, maybe in pro-life work, they want to get involved in the pro-life movement. They want to do something good for God, for the country. They want to be people of character and responsibility and service. And many of them are looking at family as that key, as a cornerstone of that, right? But they're struggling because they don't feel like they can have a family. They can't meet the person. They're struggling in dating, et cetera. What's your advice or your take on why we're where we're at with dating and just even being able to get married? Just first from the man's perspective, because, there's obviously like red pills and incels and trad stuff online. And then there's also the opposite of like the feminist man. And what's your advice to men who want to get married and be family men, but they're struggling to find that path?
I think that's something that has to be, this is something that I had to acknowledge, because I would talk about do this, do that. And I had some good buddies of mine going like, Nick, that sounds great. And I'm so glad that worked for you 25 years ago, but you have no idea what it's like to go out right now and try to do these things.
I do hear that a lot, by the way, like, oh, you have no idea how hard it is for me.
Yeah.
And I hear that from some women, but I hear it more almost from men. I feel that it's so hard for us. The women are like going through the, online dating rituals. They're like doing the things and it's hard, but it's particularly, I feel like that's a complaint I hear from men.
I think modern dating is really good if you want to get divorced one day. I think it's absolute crap if you actually want to have a healthy marriage. And so the question is okay.
How so?
Well, because we're treating other people like they're commodities. We're treating their other people like they're things that we try on for a little bit of time and hope it fits. And maybe if it does, great. And nobody should care about the 40 other people you tried on before they got there. Well, newsflash, people care. And unfortunately, there's a movement that try to tell, well, it's different for men. It may be different for men in the way that we process things differently from women. That doesn't make it moral. It doesn't make it right. It negatively affects us in different ways than it might negatively affect women, but that doesn't mean that it's positive or it's okay. And so I think a big part of this, one of the things we talk a lot about when it comes to, okay, for men, how do you find the sort of woman that you want to marry? Well, first of all, ask yourself this question. Are you worthy of her? Are you worthy spiritually, physically, intellectually, emotionally, professionally? Are you worthy of the woman that you want to attract? If the answer is no, well then great, you know where you need to start. Start working on those things. You control those things. You can't control who God's going to put in front of you. But you can control those things. So start working on those things at the same time that you're actually going out into the environments where you are most likely to find the sort of woman that you actually want to build a family with. That's another thing that frustrates me is when guys will say, well, I can't find a good girl. Where are you going?
Where should they go?
Well, I don't leave my house. Oh, you mean she didn't walk in your room? No fooling, right? Or like the club. Really? So you thought you were going to meet the future mother of your children at the club? Is that why anybody else is going there?
Where should they go to find their wife?
I think you have to go. So the most important thing that I've found with respect to my wife is we knew that we believed the same things with respect to our worldview. Our faith, the way we wanted to raise children, the things that we want to do, what we saw as our respective roles as husband and wife, what that looked like. We talked about those things. So where do you find those people? Well, if worldview is the most important thing, right? Like again, your faith in the core essentials of what you believe. If that's the most important thing, then you go to the areas where you're most likely to find the people that share those values. We actually had someone say, could you, because we have a separate community along with our social media stuff, and they're like, could you set up a dating component of that? I'm like,
Not a bad idea.
We might, because again, so for me, my wife and I went to a Christian high school together. So you go to the areas where you have the highest probability of running into somebody that shares those core values. Because that's most important, right? Like attraction is important. Like all these other things are important. The fact that you like to do certain things, great, that's all important. But if you don't agree on the most fundamental elements of reality, right? I don't care how hot she is, right? If she's going to trans your kid, you probably don't want to get married. Sorry, that's just the reality. Girls, don't care how good looking he is, right? If he's a punk and he doesn't see any problem with going around and playing the field, probably not the guy you want to raise kids with. So going in the environments, and again, there are so many areas where there are shared values along with shared interests. One of the instances I bring up, because I had a friend of mine, and he's 28, desperately wants to get married.
I know like 10 girls that are looking for a great guy. So.
No, very, very, very talented.
I'll send people your way of the dating service if this gets started, Nick.
We went to an event called Homesteaders for America, right?
Great place to meet the local.
Homesteaders for America. So we go
raw milk and all, right?
Oh, it was great, right? And it's not like everyone. I mean, people have this image in their mind of what that is, but it's like a full spectrum of people that just like regenerative farming, to people that are like homeschooling, to people that just, their kids have food allergies and they're looking for alternatives because the stuff at the grocery store isn't doing it for them. So there's this wide spectrum of people that are interested in this community. And it was funny because he showed up there and he goes, my gosh, 10 minutes into this place and I've already met 8 eligible people that I would be interested in going out on a date. I'm like, yeah, you put yourself in an environment. You did the stuff that you needed to do for yourself. Again, spiritually, physically, intellectually, emotionally, professionally. You did those things. Like you're worthy, you are working to be worthy of the sort of woman that you want to marry. And then you're putting yourself in a situation where you're more likely to find the sort of woman that you would want to build a life with. And I can appreciate that the number of those places may have diminished. I can appreciate that maybe the number of people looking for that has diminished, but it's not gone. It hasn't evaporated. And I know this much, if you're complaining about it from your bedroom, you're probably not improving your own situation. And that's the part where my tolerance for the complaining diminishes greatly. So I can appreciate that the struggle is greater now than it was when I met my wife and got married. But the opportunities are still there. And part of it is men assuming the responsibility for creating those environments. Because I do believe that strong men create the sort of environments. One of the chief jobs of masculinity is to protect femininity. And if you are doing your job right on what genuine masculinity is supposed to be, right? Not just the aggression, not just the competitiveness, not just the capability for violence, but the honing all of that in order to serve a noble purpose. There are parts of me that very, very few people have seen, right? And most of the people that saw it were in Iraq, and I'll probably never see them again. There are other parts of me that only my wife gets to see. There are other parts of me that my children get to see. So yeah, there's the violent guy that needed to be violent in those moments. There's also the tenderness that belongs to my children. And so if you're working on being that kind of masculinity, you will be shocked at how that will call out femininity as well. That nurturing component that you were looking for. That sort of woman that takes everything, every instinct that you have as a man and just helps refine it towards something that is noble. I mean, there is a reason why a man will crawl through broken glass for the woman that he loves, is because there is something about that for us is just the height of beauty we will see this side of heaven. And it's not just the physical, it's everything that comes with it. And so if you want that, then start creating the sort of environment where it can flourish.
It's so beautiful. And it's so true, because I think the more we are who the caliber of the person we want to attract, we do just naturally start attracting that caliber person on the journey to become that person.
Yeah.
Because you meet other people on the journey, whether it's at church or, getting an education and developing your moral sensibilities, or it's in business or whatever it is, and you're driven towards good and public service, volunteering, whatever, you're meeting people along the path. Okay, this is so good. But to close us out here, what are some pro-life, what would you say the pro-life movement should be doing more of right now for us to be effective? We need to not just keep on existing. We need to end abortion. We need to make it unthinkable. We need to make it illegal. What would be maybe the three things that the pro-life movement should be doing more of?
The fact that live action does so much work in the cultural space that's the front line right now. That doesn't mean you give up on the legislative battle. You have to continually fight there. But in some cases, we're fighting in places where we can actually gain, victories. In other places, we are just holding the line as much as we possibly can. So in the places where you can gain victories because you have a culture that wants them. In the places where you're just holding the line or you're losing, it's because you have a culture that doesn't want it. So deploy your resources and deploy your strategy appropriately, right? Go to the legislature and fight for those things as much as you possibly can. Help hold the line in the legislature in the places where you can, and then impact the culture as much as you possibly can. Now, what does that look like? Well, part of it is the engaging in social media. When you go on whatever podcast, right, and you are fighting for these things and you're doing so in an intellectually rigorous, but also kind and compassionate way, people are watching that never would have heard this message. Otherwise, their entire impression of the pro-life movement is some bearded white dude like me, right? And they're thinking, well, I don't even care what that guy has to say about this subject.
They love you, Nick. And you'd be great on whatever if you ever went on.
But when you do it, right, there's an audience that you will reach, right, that I can't. And maybe there's audiences that I can more effectively reach. So find the right message for the right audience, send the right messenger, and continue to do that. But in addition to all of that, we have to first start with our own homes. Like I said, we're not aborting our children, right? But are you sending them off to educational institutions that are going to teach them to hate the things that you love? Because if you are, and you're consistently doing that over time, then I don't think you should be very surprised when all of a sudden they come home from college and all of a sudden they think something very differently than what you taught them. Right? Have you actually explained it to your kids? Do they really understand why you believe in this? Because if it's just, if all you've taught them is do what I say because this is what we believe, then you haven't taught them to actually love this movement or to love life. What you've taught them is a power structure. You've taught them an reward and punishment structure based off of whoever's currently in authority. And guess what, mom and dad? When you're no longer in authority and it's the college professor, it's the boss, or it's somebody else, then they're going to go with what the same reward and punishment structure that you taught them. It's just you're not in charge anymore. It's not your values anymore. So your responsibility is that when your kids leave your home, it is their values, not just a regurgitation of yours. And they have to understand and they have to truly believe in it. So if you're modeling that first, we win because we have more kids, right? And let's face it, democracy is a numbers game, right? But if we're having kids and we're teaching them the way we want, but then we send them off to educational institutions, whether it be the school that they're going to, whether it be the universities they attend, and all that's getting educated out of them, well, then what are we doing? There's a reason why they fight so hard to push some of the stuff they do within schools. They're not having enough of their own kids. They need yours. Don't give them to them. That's probably step one. So, and then everything else within the pro-life movement, the cultural engagement, the taking away the arguments. I love crisis pregnancy centers. I'm going to be speaking at a crisis pregnancy center here in Roanoke later on this year. Because once again, whenever they point their finger at us and say, you only care about babies in the womb, you don't care outside. Oh, really? Really? Because I remember listening to Elizabeth Warren wanting to shut down crisis pregnancy centers. It's like, okay, now we know who's really taking care of kids. So get out there, do the practical things. Starts with your home, starts with then your extended family and your community. And then if you want to get involved in this movement, I highly encourage you to do so. You find organizations that are doing a good job of it. One of the reasons why anytime live action wants me to do anything, I do it. It's because I know the time that is spent doing that, all of our time is valuable. The time that I spent doing that will be exponentially rewarded because you're good at what you do. So start at home, build out, find the organizations that are actually doing a good job and not just fundraising, and go out there and be a part of what they're doing.
And vote for delegates like you and go to your YouTube channel.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's
My
awesome.
pleasure.